Hello, and welcome to the Giants of Backlog, NPR edition. This week, we take a little detour into the world of 3D platforming. So if you like what you hear, please subscribe and share. And if you don't, good, because we're back to our regularly scheduled program, where the Giants of Backlog meet every couple of weeks to discuss the game that we've been recently playing. I am the host of this week's episode, Alec, joined as always by my fellow Giants, John, Jay, and Paul. So this week we're discussing Voodoo Vince. So Voodoo Vince is a 3D platformer from 2003 that was an Xbox exclusive at the time. So I'm really out of my comfort zone as a Sony pony, Sony fanboy. And Jay was very shocked when I picked this game because it's one of your favorites from your childhood, right, Jay? No. Oh, okay. I know you mentioned it when I was listening to Ukulele. I know you mentioned it as iconic. So go figure that I picked the two 3D platformers that we played. But this is one of Taylor's favorite games, and so it's been on my backlog for a while as well. But
did it ever get ported to PlayStation?
No, it's on. I'm assuming we all played the remastered version on Steam.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think it's ever come into PlayStation, and that's okay. I don't think PlayStation's missing out. But we'll get into that. So, I'd like to start off as we usually do with a nice little icebreaker topic. So, I'd like to get your guys' opinion on the topic of simplicity versus complexity. Is there a line? Is there too much complexity for games? Is there too much simplicity for games that makes it good or bad? So it's a little bit of free flow conversation around that. Who'd like to start?
Yeah, I can give some thoughts. So I think it all comes down to the gameplay loop and if it's fun. And there are certainly games that have simple loops that are a lot of fun. Just off the top of my head, Vampire Survivors. During gameplay in that game, you move your joystick, and that's pretty much the only input for half an hour, but it's a lot of fun. I think it's simple game design, but it's good game design, well thought out. And then you have, like, we've been playing Factorio. That game, there's so many systems that you build on top of each other. It's a thinking man's game. It's a lot of fun. It just scratches a different itch for me. But I think both of those games are well done and they have fun, satisfying loops. And you can have games that are too simple and the loop isn't fun. Like, those certainly exist. And you can have games that try to get too cute and too complex. And at the end of the day, the loop's just not fun. So I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to is the loop fun?
I agree. And I feel like we're in a point in the games industry where it's more, right? But also, on the flip side of it, it seems like the more popular games are the most simple ones, like the most simple battle royales, multiplayer, like those seem to be the more popular ones that stick to like really simple. But for like intense gamers that want a like focused game, we're layering on these complex systems more and more, it seems like. And especially in growing series that have follow-ups, they add a little bit each time, right? And it adds a little bit more complexity to the game, which can be good and bad, like you said, Paul. And what it boils down to is the game fun. Um, but it can be both a deterrent on both sides of it. I feel like.
Yeah, I think you're right. A lot of the games that I think of that have more complex loops, they do seem to be more niche strategy type games or grand strategy, like the Warhammer Total War series, RTS genre in general. Like they don't have millions of players, but they have like usually passionate communities behind them that love all of those systems. I played a lot of the Crusader Kings games, and those games have so many systems that you have to interact with and menus that you have to dive in. That's definitely not for everybody. Maybe it's easier to go for a simple idea that is fun. Even like, cause I'm thinking of like Horizon Forbidden West, right? Like it's a giant world and there's all this content, but the loop is relatively simple, right? You're just running around an open world, talking to people. You sneak up on some dinosaurs. There's some combat, and it kind of repeats, right?
And they add in more complexity that's a little different from the first game because again, it's a sequel. So like, what can we do to change things up? And I don't think it necessarily that complexity adds value to the game itself. And I mean, you look at the open world genre in general, they're like adding collectibles for the sake of collectibles. What comes to my mind is Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I mean, that was ridiculous. Just making me run across the freaking map for 10 minutes just to grab this little icon. Like, it's not really respecting my time, but it's more complexity in this open world that we kind of talked about. Shadow having a completely empty world, right? And that was okay for the time. What about you, John, in terms of like MMO complexity and simplicity, like RuneScape, New World, those types of systems that all have to interact with each other and maintain a player base, right? Because that's the key focus of MMOs.
That's an interesting side of it that I wasn't really thinking of.
That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, it's
we
good.
Ask the hard questions here.
Yeah, I mean, from my side, I think MMOs that I play mostly for the ability to grind and feel like the effort that I'm putting into the game is valuable. If I grind 100 hours in a single player game that, like a example, like the first Red Dead Redemption, I grinded hunting animals, or the first, Red Dead Redemption. I grinded hunting animals and stacking money for I don't know how many hours as a kid. And then the game ended and I was rich. Playing poker, using bait, hunting wolves, figured out that you can put your horse on top of them and you skip the skinning animation. But grinded that like crazy, right? And and then the game ended and I was rich and I got nothing out of it. So
it wasn't rewarding in the long run, right?
Right. So doing that in MMO is rewarding because you feel like you are getting ahead of other players. And that's what I really enjoy is, being very much ahead of the average player of the player base, feeling like I'm one of the top guys in that MMO. And I think complexity.
Yeah, in the first month of New World, right, you were like the top of the economy from anyone we knew.
Yeah, top of the economy. I was in every war. That was a lot of fun. So I think complexity in an MMO where the idea is that you want to be the best and you want to own souls in this thing is great because it makes it makes it so there's so much more to do and so that the MMO lives for a lot longer. Because if it's something that you're going to sink that much time into, you want it to have longevity,
Yeah, but contrast that to an MMO like Destiny 2, where they've put a lot of effort into making the menus and the systems more simplified and streamlined, so it's not as intimidating to new players. I think in a game like that, you're spending way less time in menus and shops and reading through skill trees and
Yeah.
stuff, and it's one of the most popular MMOs out
I know
there.
nothing about Destiny 2. But is
But
complexity really just like, oh, the menus are difficult?
no, it's the systems themselves, right? I mean, that's one aspect of complexity. A more complex menu can make even a simple system more complex, right? I mean, it's one aspect of it for the whole package.
I think quantity of items and a quantity of equipable items and gear is a type of complexity. Quantity of weapons, quantity of
Mm-hmm.
play styles, uh,
Yeah,
complexity of the economy. All of those things are very valuable in that setting that make the game have more longevity. I think that would be what I'd say is the most important part of complexity in an MMO setting is uh, making sure a game that people are going to sink that much time into doesn't get stale.
right. But what about something like you guys have been playing a lot of Temtem, right? Where you look at the surface PvE aspect of it, like any Pokemon game, it's for babies, right, Jay? But even within the like PvE aspect of breeding them that we were talking about, that's a pretty complex system where you're trying to get optimal Temtem or Pokemon. I mean, when you take a layer deeper into the optimization aspect of it, that's where the complexity lies.
That's what
But
I think that's what's addicting about MMOs to me is, I spent probably 20 hours and I got a perfect Temtem through breeding, right? And then I just bought one for 10K. So the systems, while being complex, don't mean a lot if you can completely skip them.
right.
For me, whether it's, I love simple games, I love complex games, just depends on the game, I suppose. And a game like New World, the more complex it was, the more we got hooked, right? We were grinding dungeons for specific resources or to get a certain drop that was very low percentage, right? That's one form of complexity. But then a game I spent a ton of time with was Age of Empires 3, right? And talk about a complex game,
Yeah.
You can time your movements with the shooting and reloading animation so that every time you're moving would be while you were reloading, and then turn and shoot in like a kiting style, depending on what resources you put where. You map your hotkeys. I mean, I think RTSs are, as Paul said, one of the most complex type of games.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
at back to your question, at surface value, Temtem is very basic. It's just Pokemon. But when you really dive into the combat and min-maxing your stats, it becomes really complex and fun.
Yeah, and fun being the key word there too, right? Like we kind of underlaid. I mean, as long as it's fun, it can be as simple as it wants to be or complex as it wants to be. I don't know if there's necessarily a preference.
Yeah.
For anyone.
Look at PlateUp.
Look
Incredibly.
at Tetris.
Yeah, Tetris. That's true. Incredibly simple, yet it got the job done. It knew what was fun in the game, and it was communication and screaming at your friends.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think there's a home for every game, and I wasn't sure if I don't think there's a magic formula, right? And that's kind of what I was wanting to explore with you guys on that topic. But
Yeah, I think Grado, like we touched on it, but if like your core idea for what your game is, like Power Wash Simulator, if you're a player who thinks that it'd be fun to virtually power wash cars and playgrounds and shit, you're gonna probably like the game. And if the complexity is there, it's probably a value added. But if you're somebody who is never gonna want to wash playgrounds and cars, simulating that, you're probably never gonna have fun in that kind of game, regardless of what complexity is or isn't there.
yeah, and the reason I brought it up as we segue into hot takes, my hot take for Voodoo Vince, I'll start, is that this is an extremely simple platformer. That doesn't necessarily make it a bad thing, but it definitely, checks the boxes on what you look for in like a platforming game of this kind of era, as we'll get into. So I'm just going to put that out as it's a very simple game. Is my hot take. You want to go next, Jay?
Sure, my hot take is where's Taylor?
She is out with her parents at the Eastern Market.
Damn, we'll have to edit in her thoughts.
Mm-hmm. She didn't want to guest star. I asked like 30 times. John?
My hot take is that voodoo doll mechanics are cool, and they could have been used more in this game.
Paul?
My hot take is that everybody in New Orleans is mean.
Everyone hates voodoo dolls.
Everybody hates everybody in this
That's
game.
true.
There's no friendly characters.
Can I change my hot take?
Sure. Jay, what's your hot take?
Well, you can keep my last hot take in, but I want a second hot take.
Okay. I'll allow it just for this episode.
If you're gonna have fucking collectibles and 1,000,000 of them, and if you're gonna fucking have an achievement for getting all the collectibles, make sure your achievement fucking works, or don't release your game.
Damn, that's a good hot take.
Oh, I want a second
I
hot
didn't
take.
even know.
Skip the
Sure,
collectibles.
John. What is
It's
it?
not worth it.
You have to make the
I agree with that.
collectibles valuable. And on
The
the
achievements also broke for me. And I think for you too, right, John?
I don't know. I never picked up
yeah,
any of those posters or whatnot. Had no
I didn't get the one for beating the final
the
boss.
final boss. Wait, Steam achievement?
Yeah,
I
you
don't
could
care.
achieve.
yeah, I don't care enough about
Well, I'm just saying they were broken.
I didn't know.
I
just-
care.
I don't know.
Thanks for caring, Paul.
Thanks for taking the call. On the flip side of collectibles, and I guess this is probably the only time I'm going to talk about it, but in one of the game design books that I'm reading, it was a very impactful statement of if you're going to make the enemies, make sure that the combat is enjoyable, because don't make your enemies like skippable. And that's something in this game that I noticed is like most of the time I was skipping enemies rather than fighting them. It was more on the platforming side rather than actually engaging in the combat system that they put together. But that's
Yeah, that's fair. You know how I fought the enemies in this
voodoo
game?
powers every time.
Yeah, I trained up a big group and used voodoo
Yeah.
powers.
Yep, that was very broken, which, yeah, we'll get into that.
I spent hours bringing, killing the bugs underneath the ship
Mm-hmm.
with voodoo powers to get the achievement for killing 1,000 enemies with voodoo powers. Because I'm a psychopath.
Yeah, I think I ended the game at 150, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm not gonna touch that.
a long time.
Oh yeah. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into. I'll start with the setting overall, and I want to talk about surprising for me, I know, but music. This was one of the first video game soundtracks. I mean, I like Shadow and I like Journey and stuff, but this is the one that I'm like, oh, I'm enjoying the vibe of this music. It's very jazzy and New Orleans. What do you guys think of the music?
I thought it fit the theme. It wasn't any music I particularly liked or would like play on Spotify, but it fit New Orleans. Like you said, the jazz. It's kind of funny. We've had a couple games set in New Orleans so far. One recently being Costume Quest. I don't think you find out it's New Orleans until the second game, though. So maybe you guys didn't
I didn't know.
realize. But
Spoiler. I like the music in this game. Like you said, it fit the theme really well. I'm also a big fan of jazz in games. I wouldn't listen to this soundtrack on Spotify or anything, just hanging out, but a soundtrack that I do listen to on Spotify a lot, that's another jazz soundtrack, is Persona 5. So it was enjoyable. It added to the ambiance of the setting. So I liked it. I consistently, paid attention to it as I was playing the game, and it was jolly.
Did you like the music, John?
Did you notice the soundtrack in this one, John?
Yeah, it was good.
Perfect. So the story of Voodoo Vince is you play as Vince, the resurrected voodoo doll, who is tasked to rescue the kidnapped Madame Charmaine, who's a voodoo wizard thing, from the big bad enemy of Cosmo, who is using magical zombie dust to do evil things, I guess. Yeah. Story's a little loose. I think the fun of this game is a lot in the dialogue, in my opinion. There's a lot of like one-liners and everything that I found myself, a little chuckle here and there. Vince is a good character. Any opinions on the story before I segue into characters?
Yeah, I thought it was a nice, tight story. Did a good job.
Tight is a good adjective.
I'm just saying that because you said it was loose 5 seconds ago.
Oh.
I think it was serviceable. That's what I would say about it.
yeah, I liked some of the interactions with the villain. I think Cosmo, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are kind of funny. I do think the story overstayed its welcome. You could have taken off probably 20% of the story.
Yeah.
I think, in my opinion. But also, I was getting all the achievements, so I probably spent a lot more time with this game than you guys did.
I
got everything.
I liked how at the beginning, when Cosmo's goons are breaking into Madame Charmaine's shop and stealing the zombie dust, she's gonna stop them and then gets hit by a chair and gets knocked out. I like that part. That was good.
You gotta set the scene. The damsel in distress for Vince to save. So yeah, we talked already about Vince, your little burlap sack, main character, funny one-liners.
Yeah, what was he? Her third favorite voodoo doll?
Her third favorite voodoo doll, yep. And Madame Charmaine is the main woman, and Cosmo's the main boss. But there's a couple of supporting characters that I found a little interest in. You mentioned the goons. Do you guys know their names? If I can.
Nope.
The names are Jeb and Fingers in Your Zombie Dust. Fingers is the name of the one goon. And I don't know if that's the one with the hook, but that'd be even funnier.
That would be pretty funny.
It probably is. This game is pretty clever. And then the skeleton that we actually see on the scene is Bones McMurdy, the jazz musician skeleton. And you know what? I think that you mentioned nobody being nice in this game. I think he's the only nice character, the one who helped Vince, and Vince is a dick to him, as we'll see in a second of this scene. He doesn't get a fair shake.
Could have just let him through. You made him go find a trumpet.
Yeah. Well,
play music.
Of course, he's a lonely skeleton.
So he's selfish.
Most musicians are.
Yeah, Vince is a dick. I mean, Vince is also included in that statement.
Yeah, everyone
Vince
sucks.
is not a nice character.
Yeah, no, there's no nice character to Vince either. It's like everyone's just trying to fuck him over throughout this thing, and it's like, why are you doing all this to help these people that are just gonna fuck you over, right? And
yeah, the turtle lady.
We get into the first Professor Ethel, the turtle professor that wants you to assemble this hot air balloon. And she fucking kicks you out.
Yeah, for no reason. Oh no, that was kind of chuckled at that.
Had to lighten the load.
All the other
had
shit.
to lighten the load. You gotta dumbbell and a 50-pound weight.
Throws out the 6-ounce burlap doll. Yeah, what a dick.
Yep, that's a good one. And then the next one to dick Vince over is Dolly. You clear out all the monsters, and then spoiler alert. Oh yeah, I forgot to put my spoiler alert early on for this game, but this is a heavily intensive spoiler podcast.
We're spoiling
everything about Voodoo Vince. So if you haven't played Voodoo Vince, pause this now. Go play it.
Pause it 20 minutes ago.
Yep. I'll do my editing magic. No, I won't. But Dolly, you clear out all these monsters and then turns into a giant doll and tries to kill you. You know? I guess that's...
Yeah, she betrayed you. She brought you to a train station. She lied to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she said she was going to bring you to the Carnival of the Praise, and instead she brought you to your death.
Her little diorama.
I guess we'll have to wait and see, or we'll have to ask the developer what the characterization of Dolly was.
So I have actually emailed the developer. No response. No.
Did they respond? Oh. Bummer.
Yeah,
Damn.
They're probably from New Orleans. That's why they're assholes.
They made their money on this game. They're done.
Well, I don't even think they're open anymore.
They have a website and
remaster.
Contact us page.
Mm.
I forget what other games they worked on, but they're pretty small. Not well-known studio.
They're not the original developer of the game, though, right?
Right. They're not.
Any other characters? Oh, the one shout out to characters I also want to... And so then we go into Crawdad Jimmy. He gets you to assemble this whole pot of gumbo, and then betrays you again. Spoiler alert. So
who saw that coming?
Vince did. He even said it. Which I also appreciate about this game is that Vince is very self-aware of his journey and going through it. The first two mini bosses, though, I guess, I'll segue into the next topic. Any other characters you want to shout out, though? Good character development in this game.
Did we talk about Madame Charmaine? And how she was like a guiding voice? I don't know if we talked a whole lot about Charmaine, Madame Charmaine, but it was kind of cool hearing her voice throughout the whole game. She would give you hints about the upcoming level, what to expect, how to beat certain things. And I think she was a good sidekick to our protagonist, Voodoo Vince, with her help, we got to the end and we were able to save her, and she was like Princess Peach, but Voodoo version. So
Yeah.
I liked her as a character, and I liked her and Vince's relationship.
Yeah. Very strong connection of her third favorite Voodoo doll.
I dug her voice actor.
Mm-hmm.
She was so good.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the voices in this game were limited but good. I didn't have a bad character that I was like, oh, that sucked or anything. But everyone,
Cosmo, the only note I had was that when you got to the carnival, Cosmo sounded very different than he did in the visions when he projected himself earlier in the game.
I guess I didn't notice that.
Hey Jay, can you start the speedrun again?
So yeah, the next topic I want to talk about is level design. And I'll kind of just list out the 4 main areas, and then I kind of want to just have a free flow discussion on each of those if you had anything that jumped out at you. So the first area is called the Quarter. It includes the back stoop, docks, Main Street, and the square. The second is Rochford. It includes the Upper City, Main Tunnel, Propeller Room, and Rocket Lab. And then we have Crypt City, which has the Gatekeeper Jam, Sarcophagus Hustle, and then Downtown Crypt City. And then Rusk Manor, which has the Porch Pooch, Tumbler Room, Busy Butler, Unwanted Guest, Trophy Room, Glowberry Tangle. And then the Bayou, which has Crawdad Jimmy, Zaria, Bog Wallow, Jean Lafitte Ship, Earth, Water, and Wood, and then the Fan Boat Race. And finally, the last area is called the Carnival de Prey, and it has the Midway, the House of Awfully Scary Stuff, House of Mirrors, and Land of Ride.
So I want to talk about the square. So that was the part where you had to change time and get the different items, get the money, whatever. I got hard locked out of progressing at this point. So I fell off a cliff with the trumpet, and it never respawned. So I couldn't get the trumpet, and the mask didn't respawn, so I couldn't get money, and the trumpet wasn't in the store, and I tried everything. I tried reloading, I tried turning off and back on, going to a different area, coming back. The trumpet was just gone, so I couldn't move forward, so I had to restart the whole game at this point. And it really fucking sucked.
Yeah, that does. I think I dropped something else in there, maybe the money, but it popped up wherever I was. Like,
yeah, I had died with the mask
before.
and it came back.
But the trumpet never did.
Dying with the trumpet. I don't know if it was because I went and I tried playing without getting the jazz lessons and then I died with it. I don't know if that was the case where it had to happen for it to not respawn, but it was not good game design.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, especially something like that where it's a progressing item.
Yeah.
Well, that's shitty, but I guess the design of the puzzle overall, I mean, it was a good concept, right? You grab your item, you gotta spin the clock to open the shop, and then go back and forth.
Fun puzzle.
Yeah, I liked it.
I had a lot of bugs with this game, which maybe we'll talk about later. But
Yeah, 2003.
also,
Sure.
real quick, falling off a cliff shouldn't cost you a life, and it's a criticism against Spyro 2, I guess. But just take a health chunk, man. Why does it have to cost a whole life?
Like in Mario.
Yeah. Like it.
Do it like Mario did it.
It doesn't. It's not fun, right?
Yeah, especially for a platforming focused game.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no point in health otherwise, then, right?
Right, and you lose all of your voodoo power when you die. So
Yep.
It was just annoying, or at least let you keep your voodoo power after you fall off. I don't know.
Yeah, that would have been nice.
I 100% agree with that. That's my biggest gripe with the game was that you collect, the blue vials or whatever to increase your health pool, but your health pool didn't matter at all because the only way you die is when you fall off stuff. Because the enemies don't do very little damage anyway, so you're only
do
dying
little damage, and how often are you fighting them, right?
Yep. And
yeah,
I wrote down like when you run out of lives in total, you have to restart the area with 3 lives, and it felt more like an inconvenience than a punishment. Like it was just super inconvenient to have to keep restarting, and till like it forced you to take your time because you're losing your lives just to this instant death mechanic, and just wasn't fun.
Yeah, I will agree with that. I never even realized it, to be honest, but it was getting annoying with life management, and I stopped caring about the lives. So it was like during the progression of the game, I stopped caring about the enemies, I stopped caring about the lives, because I would just like restart the level or whatever, which only sucked a few times that you were like needed to go back to like the beginning of a pretty long area, but for the most part, I mean, restarting a level didn't reset your progress or anything. So
another level that
it was just annoying.
Another level that I really liked. Well, shout out to that I liked here. I liked the zombie guidance counselor. That was fun.
Yeah.
And I liked the boat race.
Yeah, as a aspiring Dragon Quest horse racer, I also liked the boat race. I've been spending a lot of time horse racing leading up to this, so I mastered it by the time I got to the Voodoo Vince boat race.
I love the House of Horrors, the rail shooter level.
Yeah.
I was a big fan of all of those kind of those different levels, like the boat race, the rail shooter,
the little mini games.
Yep. Yeah, like those all landed for me.
Yeah, and I think they did a good job of adding in the mini games as well. I mean, I didn't like the cloth mini game in the Upper City too much, but that being the exception, the rest of them were pretty fun. In the first area, the note I have for Main Street is the one where you have to do the gas station mini bosses. You got to run while yourself on fire and blow them up. The only shout out I want to give to that is that the names of the bosses are Reggie and Primo. And so it's like regular and premium. So I like that a little bit. Yeah, I didn't catch it either until I was reading it. So I was like, oh, that's cute. I gotta give a little shout out to that design, the character design, at least. But yeah, for the most part, I feel like this game, they made it linear at first, and then some areas had a few like hidden passageways and such, but for the most part, I felt like it wasn't too bad in terms of like hiding stuff.
To summarize, like my thoughts on the level design in this game, the level that I didn't like the most was probably the dollhouse. Going down linear hallways into new areas, not very open, enclosed rooms. My favorite levels were the ones where big open areas. You platform all the way down to the bottom, and then there's an elevator to take you back up to the top. You've unlocked a new area at the bottom, and now you can go up high and explore that. Those were the ones that felt ukulele-esque to me and were the ones that I enjoyed the most. And most of those areas that you named in the game had one level that was open like that, and it was always my favorite one.
I can agree with that.
In each part of the game.
Now that you say it, the dollhouse is like, it's interesting. It's kind of strange, right? Because it's a level in a platformer that like removes all the platforming almost, except for when you're following the butler. You know, you're just going up and down stairs. You're moving around the floors.
Yeah.
So I agree.
Moving around that room, which was like a cool mechanic for a second,
And
right?
you don't
But
want to do
really
it 3
go anywhere.
times.
It's more about
Yeah.
the puzzles in
But-
the dollhouse,
Yeah.
right?
Are you
The
talking
trophy
about
room,
the
that was
haunted
just fun.
manor?
Yeah, we're talking about the Bruce Manor as the dollhouse.
Oh, okay.
It was interchangeable at that point, so I was like,
The doll's
let it
house.
slide. The dolls, yeah, apostrophe house, yeah. But no, I mean, technically it's Cosmo's house. I like looking around this area though, because there's like a picture of Vince, and I was like, he's in on it the whole time? Or like Bones, like they just use like art to frame up these pictures, right? They just use all the like character art. But
I didn't realize
yeah,
that. That's fucked up.
But yeah, there's like a picture of the skeleton guy. I was like, I thought he was my friend, but no, he's hanging up in the enemy's mansion. And then there's a picture of Vince. Why is that there? You know, the little details that I noticed in the manor. But yeah, the room itself was whatever. You had that bell puzzle, and then other than that, there really was no point. This butler room was annoying as shit for the frickin' collectibles, though. Like, did anyone figure out a better way to get all the collectibles?
Die a bunch of times.
Yeah, that's what I ended up doing, and I was like, is this really the intended solution? Is just to, like, follow him over and over until you get access to the new, like, area of collectibles, and then you die again? Like, that's kind of shitty.
Mm-hmm.
But, anyway.
Jump to the ledge with the collectibles and then wait 10 hours for the butler to come back around.
Yeah, right. No. So that was one gripe when I was gathering the collectibles. I thought that was pretty crappy design, was having a rail follower that you had to kill yourself to get anything off the rail. Like, it'd be one thing, right, if you could get the collectibles and then easily jump back onto following the butler, but it was not like that at all. Right?
Yeah, what was the level at? Like, we're watching it now in the speedrun. What was the name of that level?
Yep,
Glowberry?
Glowberry Tangle.
I have a note this is where Miyazaki got the idea for shitty tree branch track platform.
Yeah,
because this is just like a couple levels in the Dark Souls series.
Yeah, and I feel like this is the level that is like required for hover mechanics. But yeah, I mean, tree platforming, come on.
This was so nostalgic for me when I was running along a branch and all of a sudden I slipped and fell off the side.
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure out why.
Yeah.
This was also the only level where I got all the cards and got the Power Skull.
Oh, you didn't do any others?
Nope, this is the only one I bothered to do it for because I just loved, I don't know, it reminded me of Dark Souls.
Yeah.
I was super into it.
Yeah, it was actually difficult platforming and finding everything. So I think that was probably I want to say the biggest open level. And it was the actual climbable areas were limited, right, because of the design of the branches. So
I got the Power Skull in the town.
Another shout out.
I got the Power Skull in the town square. I am so confused. What did it do?
Gave you another charge of your voodoo power.
Which again didn't matter if you died platforming. So yeah.
Yeah.
That's all it gave you. I mean, and that kind of gets in. We'll go into collectibles later, but any other levels that
I
really,
loved Fingers Rides. My favorite thing about the platforming in this game was like that the platforms themselves are pretty chaotic. Uh, they weren't just,
Mm-hmm.
standard platforms where you can tell everything that you're supposed to jump on is laid out in front of you. You could jump on whatever you wanted to jump on. So I like that. It's like a
Yep.
you can create your own path kind of thing. Um
Yeah, I agree
so
with
with
that.
Fingers Rides, you had, especially when getting up into the top of the circus tent, there's just so many moving parts from what you're jumping from and to, and for
Oh
me,
yeah,
I think it was like one of the
I
most fun platforming sections that I've ever played because of like how difficult it felt, yet uh, how, I don't know. It's like it wasn't even smooth. It was just unique. It was like to me, it was like a special section.
Which
I
part?
I have a note. It's the land of rides, so like the overall hub world. Once you get the rides moving, you have to jump from like the Chinese food to the cats, and like it's the hardest platforming section of the game, in my opinion. And I never
No,
want to hear another cat scream because of the amount of time I hear
Yeah,
meow
yeah, that
meow.
was annoying.
Oh my god. So yeah, I guess like in terms of design of levels, if you have to have a player repeat something over and over, don't make an
yes,
annoying
that's fair.
audio cue for that. And that goes with
No,
like
I love that
combat and
part.
everything.
I thought that was a high point of the game for me because I saw those rides and I was like, the platforming I thought was pretty light
Mm-hmm.
up until that point, and I
Agreed.
thought, is that what we're gonna have to do? We're gonna have to platform all the way up those rides? No, they wouldn't do that. And then when I realized that was what I had to do, I was like, I was so
Yeah,
into
to
it.
John's point, I also really like that, you know, it wasn't clear what to jump on. You would like try something out, like, can I stand on this railing? Oh, I can. And then figure out your own path sometimes. So that was kind of cool compared to ukulele, where there's just like, okay, here's this circular area you can jump
Yeah.
to. Here's the next circular area. So, and anything else you slide off, right? So, and I think that's kind of consistent with the older platformers. Like, I believe it's the same way in Psychonauts. Paul?
Yeah. You can pretty much find anything.
Yeah, you can jump on anything. So, I think it makes a platformer more fun when you can try, or you see something up high and you go, how the hell do I get up there? Because there's no apparent platforms to jump on. You have to jump on tiny pillars or whatever.
Yeah. And I think I kind of find that in the way that I play Skyrim too. I do a lot of like reclining and trying to like
The real 3D
mm-hmm.
platformer. One thing about like talking about the platforming that I think hurt this game was the hover mechanic.
Yeah.
Just the fact that it was unlimited and you really lost height slowly. And I get it. This game is for kids, right?
without verticality, I want to say.
I just think that when I fall, I could just usually hover like on the glow, whatever the tree branch level. Like if I fell, I could usually hover to a lower branch and not die, or hover to somewhere where I could throw a pin and swing. So it just kind of took the stakes down for me. I think they could have done it where it's like you can hover, but you can only hover for like 10 seconds and then you kind of fall. I think other platformers have done that. But I just thought it made the platforming less challenging, having that hover mechanic so heavily utilized.
I don't know. For a platformer, I'm not really looking for a super hard experience, you know?
But what about, I mean, you just kind of talked about how you're finding, a path that's not apparent.
Yeah.
Like that's not, I mean, that's part of what I like about platformers is when they're challenging.
I wouldn't say
and I feel like, oh, my skill is how I got to the top.
I wouldn't say that dying because you can't hover would be more fun.
I think it goes hand in hand with the.
Because your hover runs out, so you
I just think they would have had to redesign the environment.
I think hovering made it too easy, but at the same time, I found myself not using it. So that's the note I have is like, I didn't really use the hover, and it probably would have helped a bunch with like landing it, but it took too much time in my eyes, and I'm used to like not having that mechanic in 3D platformers, so I just found myself jumping.
I wish there was a way to do a double spin. That would have been so cool if they put that in. Like in Mario 64, they have a way where you can dive in the air to extend the distance you get.
Yep.
I don't know if they have anything in Psychonauts, but a lot of 3D platformers have a mechanic where you can figure out a way to like glitch and get more distance. Like in this one, it would have been just figuring out a way to double spin in the air. That would have been so cool.
Yeah, any other question or any other comments about, I guess that's a nice segue into the other mechanics. So platforming in general, I thought it was pretty light for the most part, like you said, and then, yeah, making the hover was, I don't know if it was a smart decision on their part. It kind of did make the game a little too watered down almost, which I guess it's a kid's game at its root, but it's not even as useful as like a glide mechanic, right, that you find in like Spyro or something, because you're not getting the verticality out of the hover. You're kind of, it's very slow.
Yeah. This, like, when I was playing this game, like we talked about the car or all the rides and platforming to the top of them. The platforming really picks up toward the end of this game.
Yeah.
It felt pretty bare bones to me until like the last couple of areas.
I agree with that statement.
And those are like my favorite areas of the game.
Yeah, I guess it really didn't even like come into effect until you got to the carnival. So it's clearly like they designed this carnival as the final area like well before they put in the rest of the game.
Yeah, and we've talked about how like the combat in this game is you can skip it. You know, it's totally optional. It boils down to boss fights, platforming challenges, and then puzzles.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about the combat, right? I mean, the spin and the punch. Well, what was the point of having the difference? You didn't even get like verticality from a punch.
Did you guys ever use the punch?
Exactly. I never used it.
The punch did more damage.
Yeah, I always would spin.
The punch did more damage, and it did gave you more beads.
Oh, see, I didn't know that.
I would use the punch for the moles because I could just whop them 3 times and they die.
I would ground pound the moles.
Oh.
Yep. But yeah, like you said, I kind of avoided it. And I feel like Voodoo Powers in particular broke this game's combat system because you would just gather the enemies, use a Voodoo Power, kill them all, and then you get all your beads right back, and sometimes more. Right?
I completely disagree. I think Voodoo Powers were
the only time
necessary
I really bothered
because the combat system was too simplistic to actually make a game out of. If Voodoo Powers didn't exist in this game, I think the combat, I don't think we would have killed anything. I think we would have ran past every enemy in the entire game after the first level. So,
which I did anyway, so.
That is basically what I did. When I would die, I would kill enough enemies to fill up a Voodoo Power slot, and then I would use that to get all of the slots I had filled up, which I think I never had.
Yeah, so I think
3.
Yeah.
And then I avoided combat.
Yeah, and it's kind of a disservice to itself for having such a weak combat system because they did design a lot of enemies. Like different enemies and different mechanics, and I found like by the time you hit the flying enemy, it was so hard to hit them that I just stopped trying.
The one thing, so like we played Spyro, and you have to deal with the enemies for the most part in Spyro because they'll fuck you up. They'll make you fall. They'll mess up your platforming. So you've got to deal with them, or they're just in the way. But in Voodoo Vince, that's not the case. Like, you, for the most part, can just run past enemies, and like the flying ones, those dragonflies, right? They shoot those things at you. I don't think I ever killed one of those, and I don't think I ever got hit by one of the things that they shoot.
Yeah.
It just didn't matter.
Yeah, same. I stopped paying attention to them very early on. The bomb droppers were just more annoying than anything else.
Not annoying enough to make you go deal with them.
And as for the voodoo powers, there were 33 voodoo powers, which I don't know if that was just an testament to the like amount of collectibles they wanted to put in, but like, was that necessary when they all do the same thing?
It was just to watch a different animation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some of them were cool. My favorite one was the outhouse one.
I saw that one plenty of times. Yeah. Do you want me to list them all?
Yeah, it's your episode, man.
I think adding the variety was
You can
good.
look up online for those watching the list of 33 voodoo powers. But yeah, I mean, I don't think I saw all of them because I didn't use it enough, but to each their own.
Did you get all of them,
Yeah.
Jay?
Well,
I found, I think, most of them.
I got all of them too, and I don't think I saw all of them.
the only achievement I didn't get was the zombie dust one, even though I collected all the zombie dust. So that's what really pissed me off, is I could have another 100% game, but the stupid developers didn't want to get their achievements to work on a Xbox exclusive platformer. So disappointing.
That is disappointing. But speaking of the collectibles, did anyone feel the incentive, John? You already kind of touched on it. You didn't really feel like
No, and I
collecting them
never
all.
will.
But you collect
Well,
all
if
the
I
stuff
love a
in
game
Spyro.
and I want to extend it out, I'll do that. But during a first playthrough, I'm never gonna collect all the collectibles because I don't love a game during a first playthrough typically. Well, and if I do, I'll go back.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Yeah, I did it as
One
I
thing-
went and like just kind of explored the whole level, and then they give you this like view that you can use to get them all easier, right? Like halfway through the game.
Yeah, I used that when I got it, and then I never used it again.
Yeah.
One thing with Spyro, though, is those levels are so colorful and vibrant. Like, we're watching one right now, and this is just like a platforming level, right? There's not really enemies around. I just connected more with the levels in Spyro. I just wanted to run around the whole level and see all the stuff, and gems are just everywhere in Spyro. Like, there's way more gems than there are zombie dust, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'd get to an end of a level and I'd have like 85% of the gems, and then I'd just be like, oh, I'm just going to run back through and find the rest.
Well, and gems actually meant something to progression, right? Like,
Yeah, that too.
Like, there's no
Exactly.
reason to collect all the zombie dust or all the voodoo power enhancers or all the voodoo powers themselves. Like, there's no reason to incentivize you to do that, you know?
Yeah, because having more health in this game isn't
Doesn't
really
matter.
necessary. Like, I don't know if I ever died from combat other than bosses. I always died because I fell.
Yeah, that's pretty much the same for me.
I liked the cards as a collectible, even though I didn't do the power skulls and I'd get them all just because it was getting up high.
Yeah, and it was a little bit...
Doing a cool jump. Jumping through the level. I like that more than the zombie dust.
Yeah, I guess the jumps themselves were incentive to get the pages more than the pages themselves, right? So
Well, the skulls
Get up high and do
the
an
skulls were kind of fun to do because you had to do platforming timed, basically, right? You
Mhm.
had to chase
Yep.
the skull throughout a level, sometimes do very precise jumps in order to make it in time.
So
So
yeah, there was only like one or two that I had to try more than once or twice, even, and that was like the last one,
yeah, the
the last
one.
skull in like this area that we're watching, but it was in the like sausage factory lead up location. That was the one that I had to retry because I had to get that precise jump spin to grab onto the roof.
I'm still confused. What did you have to do with the
That
skull?
was the hardest one.
So it like goes on a path and you have to chase it, and if you're not quick enough to catch it,
Was that
it
ever
restarts.
explained?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, she explains it. Like, collect all these pages, and then maybe it wasn't, though. Maybe you just had to
I
go
did
to the skull and
interact with it, and then it
and
just
No, the skull doesn't show up till you
and I
collect all
did
the
that on one
pages.
level. Then the skull showed up, and then it went around in a circle, and I'm like, okay, so what does that even mean? So I'm like checking where it was. I'm like, is it showing me where voodoo dust that I didn't collect is? What's going on with this thing? And then I just left. I'm like, I don't understand what's going on with this.
No, it's chase the skull.
It's a platforming challenge. It's a timed platforming
Just
challenge.
never explained it.
It stops and it waits like 5 seconds, and you have to go up to it before it, in the 5 second circle, despawn and go back to the start. And you have to start over.
Yeah, I had to do the one on the carnival level multiple times. It was tough. Because you had to do a jump where you're like on a ledge and jump out and then back on, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I had a lot of trouble with that too. Oh, he's just breaking the race.
That's insane. The speed run.
It's like Bennett Body right now. I know. I enjoyed watching the speed run just because it was like I used it to refresh my memory on each of the levels, and just some of the skips are just so funny and amazing, like this type of game breaking stuff. But there's also a lot of boss skips, which let's talk about the bosses and the boss design. A lot of them were platforming focused. So we have the Bone Goliath, which you platform to the top and then zap your head on this giant T-Rex, right? The Two Eyes, which was the giant croc that you had to then platform onto his back and then jump into the spikes. And a lot of the enemies were all related to killing yourself or hurting yourself in order to hurt them, right? That was the gimmick of this game for the most part. The rat rodeo, where you run around as the rat and jump from platform to platforming. And then Dolly, you had to race to get hit by the two trains in 3 different locations. The video game rule of threes was adamant throughout this entire game, right? You saw you had to do the same thing 3 times for every single boss. Hurricane Hannah is the end of this section that we're on, where you have to turn on 3 fans and then kill the tornado. Evil Vince was you had to jump over his waves and then hit him and then clear minions, do that 3 times. And then finally the Cosmobot had multiple sections, right? Where you had the bumper car, and then you had the platform to the top of like him, and then get to the spaceship, and then had a little plane combat, dog fighting, and then platforming on a final section inside of the Cosmobot head. For the most part, I don't think there was any real huge challenge to any of these bosses. They had fun little gimmicks, but I feel like I personally didn't struggle or
I
have
struggled.
too much of a hard time.
I struggled with Hurricane Hannah on the last part of it. I could never make it in time.
Yep, that was the tightest timing.
Yeah, I think I had like 50 lives because I grinded the 1,000 voodoo kills. And there was a heart there on the part where I was grinding, so I grabbed the heart every time. And I got down to like 10 lives on this part because on the last, rule of threes, the last time you do it, the timing is super fast, and I couldn't
Yes.
make it there in time a lot.
Yep, I have the same exact note that I had. It was so tight on timing, and I didn't die. I just had to redo the 3 fans like 10 times, and I'm like, what the hell, man?
Yeah.
Every time. So yeah, that was probably the hardest boss.
They definitely get points for creativity through the boss fights for
Yeah.
me.
No, I
They
think
were
the
creative.
hardest boss was Cosmo, but I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Well, let's talk about it now.
Okay. Fuck this boss.
Cosmo?
Yeah, fuck it. I hated it.
Oh, I love
No,
this boss.
man, this
Which
was
part?
this was getting over it with Bennett Foddy before getting over it with Bennett Foddy. I was platforming up the fucking robot and I fell like 6 times all the way to the bottom and had to fucking redo it, and I was getting so pissed at this game at this point.
Oh,
And then
man.
in the brain area, I finally got all the way up to the last thing to hurt myself. Like basically the end of the game. And the cutscene played and the stairs didn't spawn. So not only did the stairs not spawn, there was an invisible wall.
Oh my god.
So
yeah,
I
you just
couldn't
had
get
so
to
many...
the brain. And I was on my very last life. So I died and had to restart the whole thing, and I was so fucking pissed. I think when I beat this game, every time I beat a game, I send a Snapchat of the credits to Paul. It's a little ritual we have. But I think I said like 0. Fuck this game. 0 out of 10.
Wow,
So
dude.
pissed.
You had so many game-breaking glitches. I'm surprised.
I had so many bugs on the Xbox Series X. I mean, like, it should be the platform
Xbox
it runs
Arcade
best on.
version?
No, it wasn't Xbox Arcade.
No, the remaster's on there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay.
I was getting so mad at these bugs. But yeah, the final boss was like ridiculous. I have a note. This game is more bullshit than getting over it with Bennett Foddy.
All right. I don't agree.
That should have been your hot take.
Yeah, that should have been your hot take.
I got to the final boss, and yeah, I fell all the way like down to the bottom, and I had to restart a few times. And but I thought like, okay, this game is a 3D platformer. Okay, because I wasn't sure up until this point. And I thought it was satisfying. It was a difficult last final boss. I thought it was appropriate, for the last fight of the game. My disappointment, the quality control wasn't here for this game because I beat the final boss and the achievement didn't pop, which bugged me.
I see what you did there, accidentally.
Achievements just in general stopped working once I got to the carnival. Yeah. I didn't get the one for beating evil Vince either.
That's weird, but
and I was reading online, like the developers patched in support for achievement hunters later after the game came out. So before you would get locked out of collecting all the shit after you went on the motorcycle. But they added a train station in the final boss area so you could go back and collect all the stuff if you wanted to. But
that didn't help enough. Huh?
Didn't help because the achievements didn't pop, man.
It was just broken. Yeah.
I did notice that I was missing a couple achievements, but I didn't care enough to go back on it. But yeah, that does suck when that happens.
It will forever be a blemish on my achievement list, a 900 out of 1,000.
I'm sorry, buddy.
Yeah, people are gonna look
But
at
you
that
could.
and be like, why didn't he just get the last one?
It's stuck at 99%, and I go through all the levels, and I have all the zombie dust. It's baloney, and maybe it's tied to when I had to restart the game. Maybe it fucked something up because of that game-breaking bug.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, I had a crash, and then my achievement stopped working, so maybe that does have to do with your saves being
I did have
up.
multiple crashes where the game would just lock up and then crash on Xbox Series X.
I think this is a perfect segue into the next topic I have for nostalgia blinders versus actually being good. And so let's set the scene for this, right? This game came out in 2003. And let's talk about other games that came out in 2003. I just have a few listed that I looked up ahead of time. We have both Knights of the Old Republic and Jedi Academy from the Star Wars franchise came out that year. Prince of Persia Sands of Time, another 3D platformer with a little bit of a twist. The Simpsons Hit and Run. Jak 2. Ratchet 2. Going Commando. And then Mario Kart Double Dash. So this year had some pretty interesting games that would have been the reason why this game didn't do as well. I can see right off the bat. And I just have a note here that this game kind of did come out in what I am personally calling the era of 3D platformers, right? So I was looking at like the list of 3D platformers as well. And there's like a lot of licensed games that took this like 3D platformer approach. And I think it's just because you could design levels in a 3D environment, similar to movies and such. But the main competitors I have listed this was again 2003. You have Spyro trilogy that ran from 1998 to 2000. Super Mario 3D, which includes 64 and Sunshine, which were 1996 and 2002. And then Sly, which ran from 2002 to 2005 with their 3 games. Banjo ran from 1998 to 2000. Jak ran from 2001 to 2004. And then I have Rayman and Tak, but we'll just leave it at those. And I think that those are all special. At least one of those from the list is special in each of our hearts, I would say. So did this do enough to set itself apart from those 3D platformers?
I didn't have the original Xbox, so I think that also hurt this game, being exclusive to a console that wasn't selling as well as the others at the time.
Yeah.
So people like Taylor might have a lot of nostalgia for this game and might like it the same way John likes Spyro, right? I can see that. For me, at the time, it was Ratchet and Clank and Jak and Dexter. I had a PS2.
Yeah.
So, and Crash. But like you said, it was a crazy time for 3D platformers, and a lot of the pillars of the genre came out around that time. So it was going up against tough competition, and I do think it is a good 3D platformer, and I do think it sets itself apart from its competitors. It just, if you're a kid, do you want to go to dark Louisiana or do you want to go to Fantasy Dragonland as Spyro,
Fantasy Dragonland. I like But I agree with you 100%. I think this game hit all the notes, right, of what makes a good 3D platformer, especially, I hate saying for the time, but for the time. And I just don't see enough of its DNA to warrant a sequel or anything, right? So I don't think that it was a franchise in the making. I think that it was just a game that they played around with what could a 3D platformer be, and then some of the best parts are the mini games, right? Where they're like, what other genres can we toss in here to make it fun? Because that was also a trend of these types of games too, is you have these 3D worlds, and then we're going to put the skateboarding mechanic in Spyro.
Yeah,
and
I'm disappointed they didn't try to make it Tony Hawk.
I disagree with you guys. Yeah, I'll go.
You want to go, John?
I disagree with you guys. I don't think this is a very good 3D platformer. I think we've touched on a couple points saying that for 90% of the game, the platforming is very weak. For 100% of the game, the fighting mechanics are very weak. The story is okay. The setting is dark, and as a kid, not something I would be super into. I think there's things it does well, but I don't think it would be. I don't think it's on the same level as the other games that we talked about, and maybe it's still nostalgia glasses, but at least those games I feel like did more well. Spyro, Jack and Daxter, whatever. So for me, I disagree. I don't think this game is on the same level as those.
I think we all agree
a lot of
with
those.
that
Yeah, I was gonna say a lot of those franchises and those games that you named, they're on a pedestal for me. Super Mario, Banjo-Kazooie.
I mean, I'm going as far as to say I don't think this game is that good. I think it doesn't do enough well to warrant it being said that it's a good game. Like the way you talked about it, Alec, you ran through the whole game without fighting enemies. You collected all the voodoo powers, but you didn't even use them. Like, you can't tell me you liked this game.
I didn't.
I mean, I like this game. I texted Jay that this is just like, oh, it's a mascot 3D platformer. This is comfort food for me. This is, my childhood.
Yeah, but
in the same way that people 5-10 years older than me, like they're playing 2D pixel 32 16-bit games. Like this is.
But as we just pointed out,
just being in the vein.
It's a good feel. But there's so many better mascot 3D platformers that.
Yeah, there are better games for sure. A lot of those games that you named, those are 9s, 10s. Yeah. This isn't that. Those are clear cuts above. But I still overall like the game.
I guess my point was that I could see if you didn't have a PlayStation or a Nintendo, that this would be the game you had nostalgia for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you had a Xbox and that was all you had, and you didn't have access to the other games, this could be your Jack and Daxter or your Super Mario. I can see that when you're a kid and you have one game and that's all you play. I could see this being the same thing as the greats that we grew up with.
Yes, I 100% agree with you. Like if you're a kid like Taylor who you had an Xbox, you didn't have other consoles like this.
Yeah, you didn't have
those games.
Nintendo 64 or a PlayStation 2. I guess, that's a good point. Was there anything else on the Xbox?
In terms of platformers?
Psychonauts came after this.
It was like way after. Not way, but
2007, I think.
But, yeah, I think that at this time, I would agree Xbox needed a 3D platformer, and so they got this studio to throw this thing together, and it definitely feels like it's thrown together.
Well, I think it's serviceable though. Is it as good as those other games? No, but it's like Jay said. If this was, I had an Xbox, I'd love.
Say that about any game though. all
Spyro
games were
is the
fun as a
John.
kid.
I think it's a testament that that's why I would say it's a testament to it's a good game. It's a competent game. I think those other games are better, but if this was all I knew,
I have
this would be
nostalgia for like
fantastic.
Madden 02. Like, there's every game is great as a kid. Like, you have nostalgia for every game you played. At least I do. I don't think that sets it apart.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
And again,
Well,
we're talking about
I don't know,
nostalgia.
John.
This is actually being a good game, and I wouldn't classify this as a good game, but it hits the major points of a 3D platformer, right? Does it do it well?
It checks
That's
all the
for
boxes,
you guys to
for
determine.
sure.
Comment below and let us know. All right, are we ready to score this one? Final reviews. We'll start with Paul.
Yeah, so I talked about this a little bit in the last segment, but I think this is a good 3D platformer. I think it checks all the boxes. I don't think it does things as well as some of those other games that we just talked about, but it gets points for creativity. All the mini games that we talked about, all of the bosses feel unique, and they have a unique thing you have to do. A couple of my favorite ones were the rat race and fighting Evil Vince, having to fight the minions to kill him. The characters are a lot of stuff is kind of meh, but I think that's makes this game overall a 7 out of 10. It's a good game. It's not a great game. Better games in this vein exist, but it's serviceable. Checks all the boxes.
All right, John.
I think, like Paul said, it's a serviceable 3D platformer. It's dragged down by a lot of mechanical items, like its combat system, its death mechanics, that make the game less fun than it could be. It's got whimsical, funny child humor in it, which I could see being good for children and whatnot. But I don't know. I think it's not on par with other games that you could be playing. And I know you're gonna say, yeah. And for me, I just think if you haven't played 3D platformers and you really want to play one, then you go play the greats. And if you've played the greats and then you play this game, it's not gonna fill that void for you because it's not on that level. So I just think it's it's a cut below. So I'll give it a 5 out of 10.
Jay.
Yeah, so I would agree with Paul on the score, but the frequent bugs really brought it down for me. The game crashes, the bugs I already talked about. The final boss, if it could have checkpoints, where you don't fall all the way down and have to redo the same shit over and over and over again, I think would have made it a better game. So for me, it would be a 7 out of 10 without the bugs, but with the bugs, I'm dropping it to 5 out of 10.
Okay. And finally,
That's fair.
Yeah, fair. I agree, and I didn't experience the bugs, so I guess that bumps up my score a little bit. But yeah, there shouldn't be a game in this day and age, especially something this simple that has game-breaking bugs. And that's just, I don't think that's acceptable for anyone to put out. So, or at least not patch within a few days, My final review, as I summarize all my thoughts, the fact that I had the ability and did skip most of the game, like the combat system, skip that, was platforming just to like collect everything, and the sense of achievement was the only thing that motivated me to collect everything, because within the game itself, there was really no incentive to collect everything. It definitely hits the pillars of what you would say makes a 3D platformer, but I don't think it delivers on anything exceptionally well. And because it's pretty average, I'm just going to give it a 6.5 personally out of 10.
I think I got to revise my score to a 6. I got to knock a point off for the bugs that I encountered as well.
All right, we'll update yours on the screen. All right, guys.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Well, as the credits roll, so will our credits. We have been the Giants of Backlog. As always, we appreciate all of our listeners, so please follow, share, subscribe on all of them. We can find us on social media at the Giants of Backlog, where we'll provide you with any updates of exciting content. Next topic would be our next pick, so I believe that will be Jay.
Yeah, so I'm going to pick a game that's been on my backlog basically since it's come out. I've been very interested because I've heard that the story in it is bonkers nuts. And growing up, I played a lot of these type of games. So I have some nostalgia for them, and it's a genre we haven't hit yet as the Giants Backlog. So the game I'm picking is Ace Combat 7.
Oh boy.
You guys need to work on your surprised faces.
The only experience I have in that genre is I played a game on Xbox 360 that was called Blazing Angels, set in World War II, and it was a lot of fun. So I'm excited for
this
one.
The only experience I have is the dogfighting, finding Voodoo Vince.
Well, you guys have all played Star Wars Battlefield, right?
And yeah, Star Wars Battlefield.
And then Battlefield, the 19 something.
Yeah, 19 whatever, 41.
Spent a lot of time in those dog fights, and there's a game for the original Xbox called Crimson Skies that I played a lot at a neighbor's house when I was a kid, and I had a blast. So,
well, we will see how my flight simulation skills stack up if I can pass my pilot's exam.
Yeah, it should be fun. I'm excited to play it and talk about it with you guys and our beautiful, wonderful community.
Yes. So thank you to our community for listening, and please support us on Patreon. We haven't plugged that yet. What else can I plug? Email us at the Giants of Backlog with any questions.
Once we get a big chunk of emails, we're going to do a respond to your emails questions episode. It will be fun.
I agree. So thank you to everyone. We have and always will be the Giants of Backlog. Tune in 2 weeks for Ace Combat 7. All right. Peace out.